The Arctic, a frozen expanse thousands of miles away. Yet the price of your next smartphone, the fuel in your car, and even the stability of global trade is being decided on that ice right now. Beneath its seemingly endless white surface, a hidden race is underway, a race with consequences that will touch every corner of the world. For centuries, the Arctic was ignored, dismissed as too remote, too cold, too difficult. But today, it is the ultimate stage of global competition, where economics, geopolitics, and climate converge in a struggle few fully understand. Imagine a place where a single shift in temperature can redraw maps, open shipping lanes, and unlock resources worth trillions of dollars. Here, every decision made by governments and corporations echoes far beyond the ice. It affects energy markets, global supply chains, and even the future of technology. The Arctic is no longer a frozen wilderness. It is a geopolitical accelerator. And the question we must ask ourselves is urgent. Why is everyone racing north? And what does it mean for your life, your wallet, and your future? History shows a pattern. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, nations scrambled for Africa, extracting resources, securing trade routes, and shaping global power for decades. Today, the Arctic mirrors that story, but with higher stakes, faster timelines, and an unforgiving environment. Beneath the ice lies nearly 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, 30% of untapped natural gas, and vast deposits of minerals critical to everything from smartphones to renewable energy. The Arctic is not just a resource race, it is a competition to control the very arteries of global commerce. The central thesis is clear. The Arctic is not a frozen periphery. It is the nexus where climate change, resource scarcity, and geopolitical strategy collide. Nations racing to dominate this region are not playing for short-term gain. They are positioning themselves to shape global systems for decades. This is a story about inevitability, historical patterns, environmental shifts, and economic leverage intersecting in a theater few are watching closely. Strategic advantage has always followed resources. The British Empire controlled trade routes across the seas, not for conquest alone, but to dictate the flow of wealth and influence. The United States, after World War II, ensured access to oil and trade channels, cementing economic dominance. These are not isolated events, they are predictable outcomes of resource-driven competition. And now, the Arctic is the next frontier. In the 20th century, the Arctic was a strategic afterthought. The Soviet Union maintained bases along its northern coast, but global attention remained elsewhere. Military planners recognized the potential, but logistical challenges made exploitation costly. Today, climate change has rewritten the rules. Melting ice makes previously inaccessible shipping lanes navigable, and technological advances put extraction within reach. What once took decades of preparation can now happen in years. Consider shipping lanes. The Northern Sea Route, skirting Russia's coast, can cut Asia to Europe shipping times by nearly 40%. That is not minor. It is a potential reordering of global trade, where control of a single route translates to economic leverage on a scale few can imagine. Combine this with resource access, and you see the full picture. Arctic dominance is about controlling the flow of wealth itself. Military presence amplifies the stakes. Russia has revitalized Soviet-era bases, deployed ice-capable vessels, and fortified northern radar networks. The United States is responding with increased icebreaker fleets and Arctic patrols. Canada strengthens northern sovereignty while remaining diplomatically cautious. Each nation knows that in the Arctic, infrastructure, readiness, and positioning can be as decisive as raw firepower. Economically, the stakes are staggering. Beyond oil and gas, the Arctic holds rare earths, cobalt, nickel, and lithium. Materials essential to semiconductors, electric vehicles, and defense technology. Nations that secure Arctic deposits do not just gain resources. They gain bargaining power over the global industries that rely on them. And with global demand rising, Arctic control is becoming an economic accelerant, one that will ripple far beyond the polar ice. The Arctic is not remote. A disruption in mining, shipping, or infrastructure can affect smartphone manufacturing in Asia, EV battery supply in Europe, and energy costs in North America. Every ripple in the Arctic has global consequences. Corporations are racing north, betting billions on infrastructure that may redefine markets. Governments are funding icebreakers, ports, and research stations at an unprecedented pace. The Arctic is the ultimate high-stakes investment, where failure is costly, and success can shape decades of economic influence. History continues to provide perspective. In Africa, colonial powers that controlled trade routes and infrastructure maintained influence long after independence. In the Arctic, the pattern is similar. Early access combined with sustained investment determines long-term leverage. Nations that act decisively today may dominate the global supply of critical resources tomorrow. Climate change is both a catalyst and a constraint. Ice melt opens access, but introduces unpredictability. Storms, shifting ice, and extreme cold can sabotage operations instantly. History shows that frontier expansion is rarely smooth. Arctic operations amplify those risks exponentially. What happens if multiple nations assert overlapping claims? International law exists, but enforcement in extreme conditions is difficult. Disputes over shipping, resources, and territory are inevitable, and the consequences are far from certain. Satellite data reveals that summer sea ice is disappearing faster than models predicted just a decade ago. Areas once inaccessible are now open to shipping and extraction. And with accessibility comes urgency. Nations that hesitate risk losing control not just of resources, but of trade influence and strategic advantage. At this point, it is clear. The Arctic affects everyone, not just policymakers. Commodity prices, shipping costs, tech supply chains, and even inflation metrics can be traced back to decisions made in the frozen north. This is not a story of distant ice. It is a story of systems shaping our everyday lives. Russia is first. With the world's longest Arctic coastline, Moscow has a geographic head start. Over the past decade, Russia has invested billions in modernizing its icebreaker fleet, reopening Soviet-era bases, and building a network of Arctic military infrastructure. Every ship, radar station, and port they develop is a strategic lever that can influence global trade and energy supply. The Northern Sea route could become a choke point. If Moscow controls it, shipping costs between Asia and Europe could spike, directly affecting the price of goods globally. The United States, while lacking Russia's geographic advantage, counters with technology, intelligence, and global influence. Icebreakers are being built, Arctic patrols are increasing, and bases in Alaska are fortified. The U.S. is playing a long game, projecting power, maintaining freedom of navigation, and ensuring it can protect supply chains critical to global commerce. Canada is quietly asserting sovereignty over its Arctic waters. Its strategy balances resource development, military readiness, and diplomacy. Control over shipping lanes and natural resources in the north could redefine Canada, gas economic and geopolitical leverage for decades. Norway, Iceland, and other European nations are active, using partnerships and targeted investments to stake claims in resource extraction and strategic infrastructure. Norway, in particular, has advanced oil extraction capabilities while enforcing strict environmental monitoring, a careful balance of gain and reputation. China, though not an Arctic nation, has declared itself a near-Arctic state, investing heavily in shipping, research, and technology partnerships. Instead of claiming land, it seeks influence over trade routes, resource access, and information networks, shaping Arctic outcomes without setting foot on the ice. Technology has become the central battlefield. Icebreakers, autonomous shipping, satellite mapping, and climate-adaptive drilling equipment are now prerequisites for Arctic operations. A single innovation can shift the balance of power in months, not decades. Nations and corporations that fail to adapt risk being frozen out, while those who lead gain disproportionate leverage. Arctic infrastructure isn't just a regional investment. Research stations, icebreaker fleets, and mining operations provide intelligence that shapes military, economic, and technological decisions globally. A nation with superior Arctic data gains a strategic edge that echoes far beyond the polar ice. Science and strategy are inseparable. Beyond oil and gas, the Arctic holds rare earth elements, cobalt, lithium, and nickel, the building blocks of modern technology. These materials power electric vehicles, smartphones, renewable energy grids, and advanced defense systems. Countries that control these resources effectively gain leverage over industries that drive the global economy. Every shipment, every mine, every route has implications for prices, production, and innovation worldwide. Even a small disruption in Arctic mining or shipping can delay the production of smartphones, slow the delivery of EV batteries, or increase energy costs. The Arctic is no longer distant. It is intimately tied to global systems you interact with daily. Environmental constraints make the Arctic uniquely volatile. Rapid ice melt accelerates access, but also increases unpredictability. Storms, shifting ice sheets, and extreme cold create operational risks that could sabotage even the most advanced plans. Every investment carries risk, but those risks also create opportunity for the most prepared actors. NATO countries must coordinate Arctic operations while balancing economic priorities and avoiding unnecessary escalation with Russia or complications from China. Misalignment could give rivals disproportionate advantage. Coordination, or the lack thereof, will play a decisive role in shaping outcomes. Accelerated ice melt and heightened competition could make Arctic governance highly contested, with disputes over resources, trade routes, and sovereignty escalating faster than international frameworks can respond. No single country can fully control the Arctic, and yet every move matters. Financial stakes are immense. Governments and corporations are betting billions on ports, icebreakers, research stations, and extraction technology. These investments are long-term and high risk, but the payoff could redefine global influence. Every decision about infrastructure, funding, or deployment directly affects international markets and global supply chains. Historical parallels are striking. Nations that secured early access to African or Middle Eastern trade routes and resources gained decades of influence. The Arctic follows the same principle, but with a twist. Climate change compresses timelines, meaning decisions that once took decades to yield advantage can now pay off, or fail, in a matter of years. Timing is everything. Insurance companies, shipping lines, and financial analysts are already adjusting policies and projections based on Arctic developments. Port authorities are planning decades ahead. Technology startups are testing autonomous vessels for Arctic logistics. The Arctic is no longer theoretical, it is shaping financial and operational reality in real time. The Arctic is a systemic convergence. Climate, economics, technology, and geopolitics collide in a complex web. No single factor dominates. Success depends on understanding and exploiting the interactions between these forces. Historical patterns provide guidance, but accelerated environmental and technological change introduces unpredictability. Russia's expanding icebreaker fleet, the USS Arctic patrols, Canada's sovereignty enforcement, and China's strategic influence all interact, triggering reactions from others. This feedback loop mirrors historical resource competitions, but with an added environmental twist. The Arctic itself is changing faster than policy, strategy, or logistics can adapt, creating tension, urgency, and opportunity. Research stations, often perceived as scientific outposts, are information hubs informing military and commercial decisions. Science, intelligence, and commerce are intertwined. Whoever controls knowledge gains leverage across every dimension of the Arctic. Energy, minerals, and shipping are interconnected. A disruption in Arctic supply chains affects not only oil prices or rare earth availability, but also the production of consumer goods, renewable energy deployment, and technological innovation. The Arctic is a hidden hand guiding global economics in real time. Despite massive investment, uncertainty is unavoidable. Ice conditions, storms, political shifts, and supply chain challenges are unpredictable. Yet historical patterns show one thing clearly. Early, decisive, and sustained investment determines long-term influence. This is a race, but the finish line is invisible. As ice melts, the Arctic is transforming from a distant frontier into a decisive lever of global power. But who will control it? The outcome remains uncertain. The patterns are familiar, but the variables are unprecedented. Every nation's move is amplified, every misstep costly, and every advantage fleeting. The Arctic is no longer a remote story. It is central to understanding the forces shaping the 21st century. Climate-driven opportunity, accelerated competition, and systemic complexity converge here, creating a theater of influence that touches your life daily. The frozen north may seem distant, but the stakes are immediate, tangible, and profound. The Arctic War has begun, not with headlines, but with the quiet accumulation of infrastructure, investment, intelligence, and influence. The consequences will ripple through technology, energy, and trade for decades. Timing, strategy, and adaptability are the keys, but no outcome is guaranteed. History provides patterns, but the Arctic reminds us that even familiar forces can yield unpredictable results when the environment itself is shifting. If you want to understand the world beyond headlines, reflect on this. The Arctic is not frozen. It is in motion, and every decision made there shapes global systems you rely on daily. Watch closely, think critically, and recognize that the future, like the ice itself, is constantly changing. The Arctic is no longer a backdrop. It is a stage where the next chapter of global power is being written, and the first moves have already been made.